Before we begin, if you haven't watched part 1, I highly recommend watching it first. This is a continuing story, and every revelation builds on the last. Without part 1, you'll miss the mystery that started it all. And if you enjoy cinematic sci-fi stories like this one, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us bring more epic adventures from the far reaches of the universe to life. Now, let's continue. Yesterday, humanity witnessed the impossible. A colossal black vessel, older than Jupiter itself, emerged from the darkness beyond Saturn and came to a silent stop near the giant planet. It ignored every scan, every scientific law, and every attempt to communicate. Then, without warning, it transmitted a message that echoed across the galaxy. Galactic Council, your judgment is overdue. The message wasn't meant for humanity. It was meant for someone else. Someone who understood exactly what those words meant. But as billions waited for the mysterious vessel to make its next move, a terrifying question began to spread across every command center on Earth. How do you fight an enemy that hasn't attacked? That was the question no one inside Earth's orbital command could answer. The giant black construct still hovered beyond Jupiter, exactly where it had appeared hours earlier. It wasn't moving, it wasn't transmitting, it wasn't charging a weapon. It simply waited. But that created an even more terrifying question. What was it waiting for? Every telescope in the solar system remained locked on the impossible object. Scientists searched for heat. Nothing. Radiation. Nothing. Engine emissions. Nothing. It was as if the colossal vessel existed without using any energy at all. Professor Ibrahim Noor leaned over the holographic display. There has to be something we're missing. Elena enlarged the latest sensor data. We've scanned it over 300 times. Marcus looked at the enormous black silhouette hanging in space. And every scan tells us the same thing. It shouldn't exist. Silence filled the room. Then another alarm sounded, not because the ship had moved, because something around it had. The stars behind the object had disappeared, not all of them, only the ones directly behind its hull. Marcus frowned. Increase magnification. The image expanded. Everyone expected to see the stars hidden behind solid metal. Instead, they saw nothing, not darkness, nothing, no light, no background radiation, no distant galaxies. It looked as though the ship wasn't blocking space. It had erased it. Professor Noor's voice dropped to a whisper. That's impossible. Elena slowly shook her head. No, impossible was yesterday. This is something else. Before anyone could respond, a message arrived from the lunar observatory. Then Mars, then Titan. Every observatory had reported the same impossible discovery. The object wasn't casting a shadow, it was casting an absence. The realization spread through the room. The ship hadn't traveled across the galaxy. It had carried a piece of another reality with it. But if that more than 600 light years away, the Galactic Council already knew the answer, and they were terrified. Emergency sirens echoed throughout the Council citadel. Military fleets poured into defensive positions. Orbital weapon platforms rotated toward empty space. Entire civilizations prepared for war, yet none of them knew who they were preparing to fight. The High Speaker stood at the center of the chamber. Report! A tactical officer swallowed nervously. The object has entered Council territory. Estimated arrival, the officer looked back at his console. His face lost all color. It has already arrived. Confused voices erupted throughout the chamber. Where? The officer pointed toward the central display. There! The projection zoomed inward. Nothing, only empty space. One delegate laughed nervously. Your sensors are malfunctioning. The officer wished they were. They're not. Another technician activated 3 independent scanning systems. Each one confirmed exactly the same coordinates. The object was there, invisible, watching. That raised another question. If the ship could choose when to be seen, how long had it been watching them already? No one wanted to answer, because every possible answer was worse than the last. Then every light inside the chamber dimmed, not because power had failed, because something else had taken control. The Council's quantum network disconnected. Defense satellites shut down. Security drones froze in place without firing a single shot. Someone had just disarmed the most powerful government in the galaxy. The chamber fell into absolute silence. Then a voice echoed through the darkness. Calm, ancient, almost disappointed. I expected better. The lights returned. An old man stood alone in the center of the chamber. No one had seen him arrive. No doors had opened. No teleportation signature had been detected. One moment, the chamber was empty. The next, he was there. The High Speaker took one cautious step forward. Who are you? The old man smiled faintly. A better question, he looked around the enormous hall, is why you've forgotten me. A murmur spread through the delegates. Forgot? How could an entire galaxy forget someone? Then the old man spoke again. My name is Orion. Across the chamber, one elderly delegate dropped to his knees. His lips trembled. No, it can't be. The High Speaker turned sharply. You know him. The delegate stared at Orion with eyes full of horror. I don't know him. I know the stories. And every one of them says he died 12 million years ago. The old man slowly looked at him. Then, with a sadness deeper than anger, he replied, so they even lied about that. The chamber fell into complete silence. No one moved. No one even reached for a weapon, because something far more unsettling had just happened. The oldest delegate in the council was afraid. The High Speaker looked from Orion to the trembling elder. You said he died 12 million years ago. The old delegate nodded slowly. That's what every historical archive claims. Then who is standing in front of us? Orion answered before anyone else could. Someone your historians worked very hard to erase. The words struck the chamber harder than any weapon could. The High Speaker narrowed his eyes. Erase! The Galactic Council has preserved history for millions of years. Orion let out a quiet laugh. No, you preserved the version that made you comfortable. A wave of uneasy murmurs spread through the delegates. The High Speaker raised a hand. For the first time, the old man's expression turned serious. He slowly raised one hand. No glowing energy, no advanced device, just a simple gesture. The chamber suddenly became weightless. Every delegate floated several centimeters above the floor. Data screens drifted through the air. Weapons slipped from nervous hands. Gasps echoed throughout the room. Then, gravity returned. Everything settled back into place. The entire demonstration had lasted less than 3 seconds. Orion never moved from where he stood. The High Speaker stared in disbelief. What technology was that? Orion looked almost disappointed by the question. You still believe everything is technology? A chill spread across the chamber, because every sensor had recorded the same impossible result. No energy had been released. No machine had activated. Nothing had happened. And yet, reality itself had obeyed him. One frightened scientist whispered, "That's impossible." Orion turned toward him. "That's exactly what your ancestors said." Then he asked a question that froze the entire council. "Tell me, how many founders do your history books say there were?" The High Speaker answered immediately. 7. Orion slowly closed his eyes. "I was hoping you wouldn't say that." The delegates exchanged confused looks. "What do you mean?" Orion opened his eyes again. "There were never 7. There were 8. Silence. The Council's central archive activated automatically. Millions of historical records flashed across the chamber walls. Every document, every monument, every official record. Every one of them listed exactly 7 founders. Not one mentioned an 8th. The High Speaker folded his arms. "The archives disagree with you." Orion nodded. "Of course they do. I watched you rewrite them." The chamber erupted. "That's impossible. Our archives cannot be altered. They're protected by quantum memory." Orion waited until the shouting stopped. Then he asked quietly, "If your archives cannot be altered, why did none of you question where the 8th chair went?" Confused, the delegates looked toward the center of the chamber. Around the council table stood 8 massive stone chairs. Not 7, 8. For millions of years, they had held meetings in this room, yet somehow, no one had ever questioned why one throne had always remained empty. A silence heavier than fear settled over the chamber. The High Speaker slowly turned toward the forgotten seat. Its surface was covered in layers of dust, as though no one had touched it for millions of years. Then Orion spoke the words that changed everything. "That chair was mine. and for the first time since the black ship appeared beyond Jupiter, the Galactic Council realized they weren't facing an invader, they were facing one of the people who had created their civilization. The words echoed through the chamber. That chair was mine. No one spoke. 47 civilizations, thousands of military commanders, the most powerful government in the galaxy, had just discovered that their greatest secret wasn't hidden in some distant archive. It had been sitting in the center of the room all along, covered in dust, ignored for millions of years. The High Speaker finally broke the silence. If what you're saying is true, why did you come back now? Orion didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly walked toward the Forgotten Throne. Each step echoed across the chamber. No guards tried to stop him. No one dared. He gently brushed the dust from the ancient seat. Beneath it, a symbol began to glow. A symbol no one in the council had ever seen before, yet somehow, every delegate felt they should have recognized it. Orion looked at the glowing emblem and smiled sadly. 12 million years, so much forgot. The High Speaker stepped closer. You still haven't answered my question. Why are you here? Orion turned. His expression had changed. The disappointment was gone. Now there was only concern. I didn't return because of you. Confused whispers spread through the chamber. Then why? Orion looked toward the enormous window overlooking the stars. Because something has awakened. The room became deathly quiet. The vessel, Kaler whispered. Orion nodded once. Yes. The High Speaker frowned. You built that ship. No, then who did? You don't know. You helped found the Galactic Council. You've crossed the galaxy. And you're telling us you don't know who built it? Orion slowly shook his head. The greatest mistake your historians ever made was believing the founders were the first. Silence. Every delegate stared at him. You mean there was another civilization before yours? Orion looked directly into the High Speaker's eyes. Not another civilization. He paused. Another age. A chill swept across the chamber. The universe you know isn't the first. Several scientists immediately protested. That's impossible. The universe began with the Great Expansion. Our observations prove it. Orion smiled faintly. They prove only what survived. The delegates exchanged uneasy glances. Every answer he gave created an even bigger mystery. The High Speaker folded his arms. If this older age truly existed, what happened to it? Orion's face darkened. It ended. How? He didn't answer. Instead, he asked a question of his own. Tell me, how old do your scientists believe Jupiter is? The question seemed absurd. One astrophysicist answered confidently. Approximately 4.6 billion years, Orion nodded. And how old do you believe the ship is? Unknown, older than recorded history, perhaps several million years. Orion looked around the chamber, then quietly said, You're all wrong. The room froze. The vessel waiting beyond Jupiter was already ancient. When Jupiter itself was born, no one moved, no one even blinked. One delegate laughed nervously. That's impossible. Orion slowly looked toward him. Impossible, when your star was still surrounded by nothing but dust. That ship was already waiting. The chamber fell silent. Every calculation, every historical model, every scientific theory collapsed in a single sentence. The High Speaker's voice had become almost a whisper. If that's true, then what is that ship? Orion closed his eyes when he finally answered. His voice carried something no one expected. Fear. It isn't a weapon. It isn't a colony ship. It isn't a prison. He opened his eyes. It is a warning. Another silence. Then Kaler asked the question no one else dared to ask. A warning against whom? Orion looked past everyone in the chamber, as though he could see across the entire galaxy, beyond stars, beyond time itself. Then he spoke 5 words that drained every color from Kaler's face. The ones who always return. And at that exact moment, 600 light-years away, the black vessel beyond Jupiter moved for the first time just 1 meter. But that single movement was enough to convince humanity that Orion had not returned too late. He had arrived just in time. The words hung in the chamber like a death sentence. The ones who always return. No one asked another question because no one wanted the answer. The High Speaker was the first to break the silence. Who are they? Orion remained still. They have been called many names: the first architects, the harvesters, the silence between stars. He slowly shook his head. But names are meaningless. What matters is that no civilization has ever defeated them. A murmur spread across the chamber. One military commander stepped forward. The Galactic Council commands 80,000 warships. Our fleets span nearly a quarter of the galaxy. We've defeated empires far stronger than ourselves. Orion looked at him with genuine pity. You mistake conquest for survival. The commander frowned. What does that mean? Orion pointed toward the stars outside the chamber. How many civilizations have existed since this galaxy was born? The commander hesitated. No one knows. Correct. Now tell me, how many still exist? Silence. No one answered, because for the first time, they understood the question. The galaxy should have been overflowing with ancient civilizations. Instead, there were only 47. Orion spoke quietly. Have you ever wondered why? At that same moment, more than 600 light-years away, the answer was beginning to reveal itself. Inside Europa Observatory, every alarm activated again. Not because the ship had moved, but because something else had. Elena stared at the incoming telemetry. Her heart skipped a beat. Marcus, you need to see this. He hurried across the control room. What happened? She enlarged the image of the black construct. The ship moved exactly 1 meter. Marcus blinked. Only 1 meter? Yes. Then why are the alarms? He stopped speaking. The numbers had finished updating. His face turned pale. That's impossible. The 1 meter movement had released more energy than the sun produced in an entire week. And yet, Professor Noor looked up from another console. It didn't vanish. Marcus turned. What do you mean? Noor slowly highlighted a faint pulse leaving the ship. It went somewhere. Where? The professor traced the pulse across the holographic star map. It traveled past Saturn, past Neptune, past the edge of the solar system. Then beyond every chart humanity had ever created. The signal never weakened, it never slowed. Its destination was the Galactic Council. Elena whispered, it's communicating with Orion. Professor Noor nodded. No, I think it's answering him. The room fell silent. If the ship was answering Orion, then that meant something far more terrifying. It had heard him across 600 light-years, without delay, without any known form of communication. Marcus looked back at the giant black vessel. For billions of years, it never spoke. Why now? Professor Noor didn't take his eyes off the display. Because I don't think it was waiting for humanity. He swallowed. I think, ... it was waiting for Orion. Back inside the council chamber, every console suddenly came to life. A deep, resonant tone echoed through the hall, not an alarm, a greeting. Every ancient symbol carved into Orion's forgotten throne began to glow with brilliant blue light. The light spread across the floor like flowing water. It reached the center of the chamber, then stopped. A voice emerged. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't male or female. It sounded ancient, as if it had echoed through the universe since before the first stars were born. It spoke only one sentence. Founder Orion. Authentication confirmed. The chamber froze. The high speaker's hands trembled because the voice had just done something impossible. It had recognized Orion not as a visitor, not as a legend, but as someone with authority over the council itself. And then the voice asked a question that made Orion's expression change for the first time. A question he had clearly hoped never to hear. Shall I begin the final protocol? Orion closed his eyes for several long seconds. He didn't answer, because he knew something the council did not. If the final protocol had awakened, then the countdown to humanity's greatest test had already begun. The ancient voice echoed through the council chamber. Founder Orion, shall I begin the judgment? Every delegate turned toward Orion, for the first time since he had entered the chamber. The old man looked uncertain, not afraid, burdened. The high speaker stepped forward. What judgment? No answer. I asked you a question. Orion slowly opened his eyes. You already know. We know nothing. The high speaker shouted. Then perhaps, Orion said quietly, that's exactly why this moment has come. Confused whispers spread through the chamber. Orion began walking around the circular council table. His fingers brushed across the ancient stone. 12 million years ago, 8 founders stood in this chamber. We made a promise. His voice remained calm. Not to rule the galaxy, to protect it. Another delegate interrupted. And we have. Orion stopped walking. No, you expanded, you conquered, you collected civilizations like trophies. But protection, he looked directly at every delegate, was never about power. The chamber became silent again. Kaler lowered his head because he knew Orion was telling the truth. The High Speaker clenched his fists. If we failed, then tell us our crime. Orion didn't hesitate. You stopped creating hope. You started creating fear. The words landed harder than any accusation. You taxed weaker worlds. You decided which civilizations deserved advanced technology. You declared yourselves the final authority of the galaxy. He slowly shook his head. The council became an empire, and empires always forget why they were built. No one argued because every delegate remembered a decision, a war, a planet abandoned, a species sacrificed for political convenience. Then Orion asked a question. When was the last time the council helped a civilization? Without expecting something in return, no one answered. Not because they refused, because no one could remember. Millions of kilometers away, the black vessel near Jupiter pulsed once. Professor Noor stared at the readings. It's responding again. Elena frowned. To what? Noor looked toward the stars. I don't think it's responding to the ship. I think it's responding to the conversation. Marcus laughed nervously. That's impossible. Noor smiled faintly. So was everything else today. Suddenly, the pulse changed direction. Instead of traveling toward deep space, it spread across the solar system. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Every planet was touched by the invisible wave. No damage, no explosion, no radiation, just information. Computers across Earth activated by themselves. Ancient observatories reopened. Long-forgotten satellites powered on after centuries of silence. Even devices disconnected from every network displayed the same message. Species identified, humanity, status. The text stopped, as though the system itself couldn't reach a conclusion. Across Earth, billions watched in silence. Then another line appeared, evaluation in progress. Inside Orbital Command, no one moved. Marcus broke the silence. It isn't judging the Council. Professor Noor slowly nodded. No, it is judging us too. Elena looked back toward Jupiter. But why? Noor answered with another question. What if the Council was never the only one on trial? Back in the Council chamber, the ancient voice spoke once more. Judgment requires 2 witnesses. The delegates exchanged confused looks. The High Speaker frowned. What witnesses? The chamber lights dimmed. The stars outside disappeared. In their place, a blue hologram filled the entire room. It showed only one small solar system. One ordinary yellow star, 8 planets, and a tiny blue world, Earth. The High Speaker stared at the image. Why are we looking at this primitive civilization? Orion's expression softened. Because, he looked at Earth's image with quiet admiration. They still have something you lost. What? The old man smiled. The ability to choose who they become. Silence filled the chamber. Then Orion revealed the truth he had carried for 12 million years. The ship did not come to destroy the Council. It came to answer a single question. He slowly turned toward every delegate. After all this time, is this galaxy still worth saving? And for the first time, the mighty Galactic Council realized the fate of billions of civilizations might not be decided by the oldest empire in the galaxy. It might be decided by the youngest one. Orion looked around the chamber one last time. For the first time, the delegates didn't see an enemy. They saw a man carrying 12 million years of disappointment. The ancient voice echoed once more. Judgment complete. Every star map inside the chamber disappeared. One sentence replaced them all. Galactic Council found guilty. No alarms sounded. No fleets were destroyed. No planets exploded. The punishment was something far more devastating. The glowing insignia above every delegate faded into darkness. One by one, the symbols of authority that had defined the Galactic Council for millions of years simply vanished. The ancient voice spoke again. Authority revoked. Confused voices filled the chamber. Our command network is offline. We've lost contact with the defense fleets. The member worlds are no longer responding to Council commands." Orion remained silent. The High Speaker looked at him in disbelief. "You destroyed us." Orion slowly shook his head. "No, you spent 12 million years doing that yourselves." He walked toward the massive window overlooking the stars. Beyond them, the black vessel near Jupiter began to move. Not toward Earth, not toward the Council. Away, its mission was over. Professor Noor watched from Earth as the impossible construct disappeared into the darkness without leaving a trail. Marcus whispered, "That's it! After everything, it just leaves." Professor Noor smiled. "I think that was always the plan." Noor looked at the newest transmission arriving from deep space. A single sentence appeared. "The future of the galaxy no longer belongs to those who rule." A second line slowly formed beneath it. It belongs to those who choose to protect IT. The message faded forever. Orion closed his eyes. For the first time in 12 million years, he smiled. The galaxy had been given another chance, not because it was perfect, but because one young civilization still possessed something the oldest empires had forgotten: hope. Far beyond the solar system, the ancient vessel vanished into the darkness between galaxies, waiting once again, not for another empire, not for another war, but for the day when the universe would ask the same question again: is anyone worthy? And somewhere beneath Jupiter's fading light, humanity quietly began writing the answer. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more cinematic sci-fi adventures filled with mystery, exploration, and unforgettable journeys through the cosmos. Thank you for watching, and we'll